Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I'm back on those 70s, 80s reels, particularly the ones made in Japan. And today I'm going to do one we haven't done in a series before. But just to remind you, there was a Silver Series set of reels that came out from major manufacturers in the 70s, mostly made in Japan. They all looked very similar. If you saw them on a pole, you'd have a hard time trying to figure out which ones were which. As an example, this is missing a badge on one side, but this is the Daiwa 7000 or Silver Series 7000 series. This is the Penn reels, the 105, that was made in Japan. Daiwa had a combination of these with the 7000s. They were made in Japan, and then I think the Silver Series was made in Korea. And then this one in the middle, which is the one I'm going to focus on today. This is a Shimano MIZ 60, similar in size and nature to that. It was picked up for a couple of dollars. It has all the similar characteristics. This one's a little noisy, but otherwise runs fine. It's a ball bearing system. It's got one ball bearing in it. I suspect it needs some lubrication. And other than that, when I was purchasing it, I just wanted to make sure that the bail system worked, which it does. This has got what I call the hammer bail, in that when you go to trip it, it's a manual trip. It just kind of slams against the this kind of red plastic thing here, and then that just trips it over if everything's running fine. But I wanted to take it apart for you for two reasons. I'll just show you that what the reel's made out of. In case you have one, you can tune it up. And then this one has a unique disc drag system up top in the spool system, so I thought I would share that with you as well. So as we're getting started, notice I wear a protective glove on my hand. I keep a parts tray nearby to take all the pieces and parts off. And other than that, we'll just kind of go step by step with this. So let's just take this off first. We don't need to take this off as part of the tune-up, but I thought I would share it with you because it's kind of an interesting drag system. When you open up this drag, you don't see what you normally see in a spinning reel, which is a stack of metal and fabric washers that sit on the post and press down. This would be an example of it. Of course, it's a much different spool, but you would see normally a C-clip, followed by a metal clip, followed by alternating fabric or Teflon washers in a stack of 3 or 5 or 7 of these things. In this case, you don't. You really have a hollow spool. And the hollow spool does have a little metal spring in there, which is your clicker to indicate that the spool is letting out line, turning backwards in a drag fight. But other than that, the drag is really operating underneath here. It has a plate that presses in, similar to the Mitchell style on the 300 and so on series. So what you really have is a drag stack on the spool shaft, and pressing down on this pushes the spool onto the drag stack. And this is a fabric washer here, and that's the one that does the work, holding it between plastic sheathing. Fabric washer pressed into the case results in the drag. So just kind of a fun little aside as you look at how manufacturers make reels. But this one doesn't need to be serviced up top here, so we're just going to tighten this back on. And we'll take that whole spool shaft off from underneath when we go to tune up the reel. So underneath then, we're going to look at what's going on the gear side. These are pretty simple reels. All of those series, that the Penn, the Daiwa, I'll throw the Ryobi in there as well. The Ryobi was definitely a similar reel in the Silver Series. And they were all popular in the 70s and early 80s before the graphite casing and the rush to ball bearings and everything else came along. So this has a single ball bearing up top. We'll show you that one as well. But you start by taking the handle off. It has a handle screw. This is a reversible, so whichever side you like, and I'll switch that over because I happen to like the right-hand side. Then we're followed by 3 case screws. Now that case screw is a Phillips head, but you can also use a flat-bladed screwdriver in there as well. Let's see if seems to be okay with the Phillips head, so I'll go ahead on that. If you're having trouble grasping it, go ahead and use the flat blade. It does have a through slot on this as well. There you go. This one's turning fine. And so all of these were kind of in the, I'd say, the median price range of the day. You could certainly find lesser manufacturers competing for the larger reel segments But these from Penn, Daiwa, and Shimano cost a couple of dollars more, but as you can see, 30, 40, or 50 years later, they're still around. Kind of interesting. Okay, let's pull the side plate off and see what we have here then. We have a standard side plate underneath. This one's clean. Actually, this whole reel is clean. Probably needs some oil. That's probably why it's making a little bit of noise there. But just a bushing inside there. There's no bearing on that. Typical, we just have an arm, a crosswind arm that goes into a main gear. It has this offset, which is going to drive it, and we'll just spin it up and down. See if we can engage the gear. Spin it up and down to show you how it pulls this spool shaft up and down in the rotation with the offset. To remove the parts then, this is a pin on the crosswind block, but all you have to do is pull the arm off. Notice on the arm we have a number on there, and we have a smooth side on the other. So when you go to reinstall, understand that the number is facing out. And I tried to find schematics on this one. I couldn't find the schematics, so I would recommend that you take pictures along the way, particularly if you're not accustomed to working on this reel. Pictures along the way will help you identify the sequence that you took the things off, and how they go back together should you get confused along the way. We're going to pull the spool off next. You go into the crosswind block. There's a Phillips headed screw in here that's holding the shaft on. That's fairly common practice in spinning reels. Sometimes you'll find a clip. In this case, we just have that screw. And hold the crosswind block. You should, there you go. Should be able to pull the spool shaft and everything off with that. They're very clean underneath. We didn't need to do any work under that spool there. So this is your crosswind block. It's good to take that out. Notice that there's a little stud on the back that rides in the channel. Notice that the post is to the left and that the indentation on this is facing down. Again, orientation is important when you go to reinstall. We should be able to pull the main gear then. The main gear we wanted, this is nice and clean. I was going to say we can clean this up if we wanted to, but these slots are nice and clean. We'll come back and lube that when we put the reel back together. Just going to grab a paper towel. It looks like there may be a little bit of stuff in there, but this is not a problem at all here. While you're doing this, check the teeth of the main gear. You want to make sure all of these teeth are symmetrical, that there's none that are chipped or broken or particularly worn. You look at it this way as well to see that that you have all teeth that are uniform. While we're at it, you can also check the pinion gear. Make sure that that gear, other than not having any oil on it, or grease rather, make sure that all of that is in order. You've got just a little bit of cleaning to do here, but this reel is it's actually dry, and I would say that probably making noise because it doesn't have enough lube in it. Just check underneath there. Now there's a burring underneath here. I'll show it to you from the other side. We're going to take the rotor off just to show you what's in this reel. But the only burring then would be on the post here. So let's go ahead and take this off while we're at it, just so you can see the rest of this reel. I'm looking for I think this is a 14 millimeter. There we go. And this one comes off in a counterclockwise fashion. You want to pay attention to that. Some of these reels come off in a clockwise, which is somewhat counterintuitive, but it comes off clockwise so that as it spins, it doesn't loosen. In this case, we have a piece here holding that on. Okay, we should be able to pull that off then. And this this looks like 100 different spinning reels of the day. You have a anti-reverse mechanism here. There should be teeth. Yep, that anti-reverse mechanism would interface with these teeth to stop the rotor. This one's clean again too. I'm going to just grab a little bit of a paper towel here, clean this up. That's very clean. There's nothing really needs to be done there. Then we have a collar on the collar. That's just a collar with an insert. This is the burring underneath. Just turning to make sure that that's nice and clean. It is. That's making a little bit of noise. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab some oil. Oil that burring up just to make sure that it's got a good dose there. And Underneath now, we're going to just put some reel grease into the teeth of the gear. I'm going to use a Penn Precision reel grease for this. Yeah, I know it's a Shimano reel and I'm putting Penn grease on it. Really doesn't matter. You want to make sure that you're using fishing reel grease. Other than that, whether you're using Penn or different manufacturers or aftermarket, doesn't really matter too much. Okay, then we're going to go back and we'll just put the collar back on. We'll put a little bit of grease to load that up too. That may be where some of the noise is coming from. So I'll put a little bit of grease along the post here. That'll work its way down into the bearing over time. Put that collar back on. And we can even put a little bit of grease on the top of the collar, although it's not really a moving part. It won't hurt it. I want to check, while I'm doing this as well, check the anti-reverse dog, make sure that that's working. It is. You can see how it moves in and out with the override. Put a little bit of oil onto the screw, which is where that's running from. It's a hollow posted screw. We can go ahead and put the rotor back on. Then we can grab the rotor nut. So very simple in design as compared to some of the reels these days that have a lot of different bearings in it. For example, it has a lot of them have the anti-reverse bearing in it now for the infinite anti-reverse. There we go. So you can't spin it any easier than that, that's for sure. Very nice. Okay, so let's grab the spool assembly. We can put that back in next. Well, actually, we should put the main gear. There's no shoulder on this, so you can probably put the main gear in without after you've installed the spool assembly, but we'll go ahead and put it in that way. Okay, again, use my my grease. And I know people kind of get crazy when I use a metal on metal with my screwdriver. Some people say it sounds like somebody running fingernails across a chalkboard. Other folks say, why don't you use wire brushes or paint brushes or things. I just have been doing this for too long now. I guess I'm just a creature of habit. Okay, put that main gear back in. I'm going to put a little bit of grease onto the front side where that crosswind arm is going to work. Now we can take the crosswind block. Now we paid attention here. Remember we said on this one was the point is to the left and the hump is below and the stud goes into the rider. We can put a little bit of grease on the channel where that's going to ride. And if there was any comment about this, that's what I would say. This reel just needs some grease. It's been quite a long time since it's seen anything from my observation. And just like that, I put it in upside down. So always worthwhile taking those notes in terms of what's going on there. Okay, same thing here. A little bit of grease on that shaft. Now you don't want to put too much on that because when that shaft comes through the gear sleeve here, the pinion gear, it'll just it'll wipe it off. It's a very close tolerance. So don't load that shaft up too much. And then once you put it through, it's kind of the reverse process of taking it out. You just want to line up the screw hole with the crosswind block. You can use something like this, which is acting as a centering pin. And then we want to go into our parts tray, grab that Phillips head screw. And once we do that, we can button up the inside of the reel here. So it's an interesting reel. It's, like I said, not only on the outside, if you were fishing on a pier in the 70s or 80s, and you looked over to your left and you looked over to your right, and you saw somebody with a silver-cased reel, pretty hard at first pass just to figure out, was that a Daiwa, was that a Penn, was that a Shimano, was that a Ryobi? And they were all pretty much built the same way. Quite honestly, it's kind of the same as the reels coming out of China today. This one had that different technology up top, which is why I wanted to particularly show this one to you, because it is a little bit different, and it's always fun learning how some manufacturers approached some pieces. But for the most part, these were comparable in time, price-wise, performance-wise, and as history has shown us, durability-wise. Remember that number came out on this, right? Okay, if you're having trouble lining that up, just move the spool up and down and you will get the line here. You can also just put a little bit on the outside of this, just so that it works its way into the ring. Okay, with that, then we can simply put this back on. Get a nice snap on the case. 3 case screws, and again, this is the beauty of that parts bucket. If you've put everything in there, 1, you know where to find it, and 2, when you're done, if there's any pieces left in there, you know you forgot something. And hopefully there's no pieces in there when we leave. And we're just tightening these down now. And this reel, I think, can be hot rodded. You can probably go back up top there and get a ceramic bearing if you wanted to. That'll take some of the noise out of this reel. I'm thinking we're probably just a little bit off center there without looking. Probably put a ceramic bearing in there. That'll quiet the reel down. I don't think you can put side plate bearings on there. Those bushings look very thin, so I don't think you can take it from a direct bushing replacement there. You can change the handle over to one of those fast knobs that they have available now with the ball bearings in them. They cost about $15, but quite honestly, I didn't pay $15 for this reel, so whether I want to invest $15 to put a handle knob on there remains to be seen. But overall, the reel is a nice reel. As I mentioned, I'm going to switch it over. It was on the left side. I'm going to put it on the right side. I'll grab the handle screw here. Push that collar piece down. And in a matter of about 15 minutes now, we've taken an older reel, we've greased it all up, shown you how this thing has worked, how Shimano built the reel, what some of its contemporaries were at the time, and how to put it back together again and go take it fishing. So this is actually one of these screws where you can use your thumb, or you can use a coin if you needed to tighten this down. It's not quite a flat slot, it's more of a elliptical interior to it. Alright, there we go, we're tight. And there we go. So we've got a nice reel. Oops. So what we'll do here, we'll just throw a drop of oil. This side is a dead man's side here, there's nothing to this. And we'll throw a little bit more onto the bail side without taking that off. This doesn't have a line roller, it's just a piece of metal, so you don't have to worry about a bearing there. It's just a shield. And one more, I'm not sure if this is the right handle or not, quite honestly. It looks appropriate for the age. It's a little tight. I'm just throwing a little oil on it to make it look a little bit better. Okay, so there you go. That's the Shimano MIZ. It's the 60 size. As we mentioned, it went toe-to-toe with the Daiwas and the Penns and the Ryobis at the time. And quite honestly, those 3 reels that I showed you, we can take them all out to the pier today and maybe pretend that we're fishing in the 70s. But in all honesty, they'll catch a lot more fish before they're ready to go. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe. Again, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.